morning to Dr. Manish and Mr. Manish and Dr. Sameer. Thank you for joining us from the States today. And before we start, I would like to start with the introduction of MSCI, what MSCI is, and then I would like to introduce our speakers and then move ahead with the webinar. So MSCI is Medical Student Association of India, which is India's largest for the student, by the student, medical student organization. And we are a registered NGO in New Delhi, and we work on basis of standing committees. So we have 6 functioning standing committees. One is Standing Committee on Medical Education, under which this webinar falls under. Then we have Standing Committee on Public Health, one on Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights, and one on Human Rights and Peace. And then we have 2 standing committees, which are Professional Exchange and Research Exchange, where we send our members to different countries to experience and different kind of healthcare system for 4 weeks. And also we have 2 functioning units. One is the bioethics unit and another is the WHO AMR unit, which is in collaboration with WHO India office. And we are also a member of the civil society organization under WHO, and we are present in almost all the states and union territories in India with nearly 25,000 registered members. So with that, I would like to welcome everyone to our webinar, which is the Usmle Blueprint. And with that, we have Manish and Dr. Sameer with us. I will give a brief introduction about them. Manish is the co-founder of MD2B Connect alongside Dr. Desai and has been involved with the organization since its inception. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Mechanical Engineering, a Master's of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and a MBA from the University of Michigan, and brings extensive leadership experience and a strong background in guiding aspiring medical professionals. His responsibilities span from strategy, operation, finances, he processes development, marketing, and IT. He plays an active role across all aspects of client management, including customer communication, rotation development, documentation, logistics, and financial processes. Manish's mission aligns fully with that of MD2B's client to help them advance in the medical training and become the next generation of exceptional physicians. Thank you so much, Manish, for being with us today. And
Thank you.
along with Manish, we have Dr. Sameer. Dr. Sameer Desai is a faculty member in the Department of Medicine at Baylor College of Medicine. He completed his residency and chief residency at the Northwestern University, Feinberg School of Medicine. Over the years, he has mentored pre-medical students, medical students, residents, and international medical graduates, and has been recognized with numerous teaching awards for his contributions to medical education. He is the co-founder of MD2B Connect, where he personally mentors and supports students in securing US clinical experience placements. Dr. Desai is also the author of 2 best-selling, widely used books on medical school admissions and residency success. As a member of the clerkship directors in internal medicine, he remains deeply committed to advancing medical education. He has also served on medical school admissions and residency selection committees at both Baylor College of Medicine and Northwestern University. Thank you so much for taking out your time and being with us. The floor is all yours, and you can go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Partho. Appreciate the introduction. Thank you, everyone, for participating on a Saturday evening in India. We really appreciate all your time and attention here. So let me explain a little bit more. Partho did a great job of talking about our backgrounds. I'll add a little bit more, and then turn it over to Dr. Desai to go through some important topics for today. So as Partho mentioned, Dr. Desai and I started the company, and it's been about eight years now. Beyond what he said about my functions of all these different parts of the company, from finance to sales to HR, IT, I do a lot of the operations things. Just a couple of personal points that I wanted to bring up. Sameer and I are both located in the US. I'm actually in the northern part of the U.S. In the Detroit, Michigan area, so it's a cold here now. We have snow on the ground, so that's our here right now. I have a uh, wife and two daughters who are 18 and 16. My parents, I was born and raised in the U.S. In this Detroit, Michigan area. My parents are both originally from Mumbai. Maharashtrian. Speak and heard Marathi and growing up and made several visits back to Mumbai and different areas around Maharashtra. That's a little bit about us. As Partho had said, our goal when starting this company was to help people from all over the world become great doctors in the U.S. And my background, as you heard, is actually engineering and finance. Knowing Dr. Desai my whole life, when he and we thought of this venture, it was appealing in a great way to put together a company that has a chance to help people, and that's what we always want to do. So that's a few more things about me. Let me give it over to Dr. Desai. He'll give an introduction about himself, and we'll get into our presentation.
Great. Thank you, Manish, and a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today, and a big thanks to all of you for inviting us. We're very excited to talk to you about how to master the match journey. Manish is in Michigan. I'm in Texas. So a warm welcome from you from Houston, Texas, where there is no snow. We're having some nice temperatures here today. And I really identify with the mission of this organization. I've met a lot of students from MSAI over the last few years, and I've heard so much about the impact that the organization is making in the community through your outreach efforts, through your public health initiatives. And I just wanted to take a moment to just congratulate you all on all the great work that you're doing. You're serving vital needs in some very, very important areas. So kudos to all of you. I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself before we talk about how to master the match journey. So, like Manish, I grew up in Detroit, born and raised. When I was very young, from the ages of 1 to 5, I actually lived in India, in Mumbai. This is where most of my relatives still live today. And so after spending 4 years in India, my family came back to the US. And since then, I've made trips back and forth and have a lot of fond memories of all of my India visits. I did all my schooling here in the US. I went to medical school in Detroit. Here on this slide, you can see a view of Detroit. The waterway is the Detroit River. The massive land to the left of the Detroit River is actually Canada. And then you can see the downtown and skyline of Detroit. I went to med school very close to the downtown area. And it was in medical school that I truly gained an appreciation for the impact that internationally trained physicians have had in the United States. Many of my attendings were internationally trained, and these IMG physicians were amazing role models. They were making their marks in patient care. They were dedicated teachers. They took me under their wings as invested mentors, and they introduced me to many things that they were doing, including the cutting edge research that they were involved in. And so I was blessed as a medical student to benefit from the tutelage of these physicians from all over the world. And they really inspired my own interests in patient care, teaching, and mentoring, as well as research, which I took with me to residency in Chicago. I completed my internal medicine residency at Northwestern University, where I was privileged to spend an extra year as a chief resident. It was during my 1-year chief residency that I was further able to develop my interests and passions in clinical care and education, in mentorship. I also had a seat at the table on our residency selection committee, something I hadn't experienced before. I had been a residency applicant, and I'd felt what it feels like to be a residency applicant, but sitting on the other side of the table gave me insight into what residency programs are looking for in their future residents. And I experienced a tremendous amount of personal professional growth as a resident, growing as a clinician, educator, mentor, and a writer and author. After finishing my internal medicine residency and chief year, I moved to Houston, Texas, where I am here today. And now it's been 25 plus years on the faculty at the Baylor College of Medicine. I serve as a core faculty member in one of the largest internal medicine residency programs in the United States. My work is as an academic hospitalist, which means all of my patient care duties are hospital medicine. So I do a combination of ward medicine and consult medicine, and all the work that I do with respect to patient care is done with internal medicine residents and medical students, which gives me a lot of joy. I have been able to gain further insights and experience into selection processes, both at the medical school and the residency level through many years of service on these selection committees. And I've continued my growth as a teacher, a mentor, and a researcher. My specific area of research interest lies in educational research, where I study how to maximize learning and performance during clinical rotations. I also, along the way, discovered a love to write, and I'm the author of 20 plus books. These books span a wide range of topics. There are books that I've written to help us take better care of patients, but there are a series of books that I've authored to help our future doctors navigate the challenges of getting into medical school, succeeding in medical school, matching into residency, and getting into fellowship. So at the far left, you'll see some of the books I've authored on getting into medical school. In the middle, you'll see some books that are centered on how to be successful during your basic sciences and how to transition into the clinical arena and the wards. And to the far right, 2 books on matching into residency and into fellowship. One of the books I've written is called The Successful Match: Rules for Success in the Residency Match. It's a book that we periodically update. The most recent edition was just released a few months ago. The prior edition was 650 pages, but because of all the changes that have occurred in the residency selection process, we felt a need to update this book. And now in its expanded most recent edition, it is now well over 1,000 pages. In its previous edition, it was recommended by the AAMC Group of Student Affairs as a high value resource, and it's utilized by a lot of US medical schools in their advising and mentorship of their own students. The AAMC is the same organization that sponsors many of the residency and match type processes, including the residency application. And today I'm going to be sharing with you some of these strategies. So what are our learning objectives for today? I want you at the end of this session to have a stronger understanding of the residency selection process in the United States. I also want to ensure that you take actions moving forward that will position you for success in the residency match. And as important as it is to take those actions, we have to know that inactions can also affect us. So I want us to avoid those inactions that prevent us from reaching our goals. Now, we can divide this process of getting into residency into different phases. So in this schematic, you can see the different phases. So we have one phase which is dedicated to credentialing and eligibility. This is where you're taking your exams and trying to eventually become ECFMG certified. You have a second phase which involves the application, and basically in this phase, you're working towards putting together a compelling application that will draw the interest of US-based residency programs. Of course, that involves all of your activities. It involves your US clinical experience, It involves taking everything that you've done and putting it together in your application CV, a compelling personal statement, strong letters of recommendation, documents from your medical school, like your MSPE. All of this is assembled to form the residency application, which is submitted in September of every year. Now, following this phase where the application is prepared and submitted, the programs review these applications and we enter a new phase, which is the interview phase. And so applicants are selected for interviews based on the quality of their application. And from the months of October through February, these interviews take place. And then finally, we have in March, in the middle of March, we have what's called Match Week. This is when applicants are notified of the match results. And those results are announced on Monday of Match Week. And you will find your placement later in the week. Now, there are a few days in Match Week for opportunities for unmatched applicants to find positions through a process that we call SOAP, where they gain entry into unfilled positions in residency programs. So these are the different phases of the process. And now I want to introduce you some strategies that will maximize your chances of success in this process. And our strategy number one is about taking the necessary steps to become a well-rounded residency applicant. And I want to share with you first a quote from a colleague, Dr. Nicole Taylor, former Associate Dean and Associate Program Director at Wake Forest University School of Medicine. And what she writes is, we like to see a well-rounded applicant and assess them based on their non-academic endeavors. Now, how important are these non-academic endeavors or experiences in selecting applicants for residency interviews? Here in the US, we survey our program directors periodically. The body that surveys these program directors is the NRMP, the National Resident Matching Program. That is the organization that administers the match. So every few years, they ask program directors, what are the factors that are important to you in selecting residency applicants for interviews? And every time the survey is administered, we find out that non-academic experience carry tremendous value in this process. So program directors are going to look at your leadership experiences. In fact, 72% in the last program director survey in 2024, involving almost 1,200 PDs representing more than 20 specialties, 72% cited leadership qualities as a factor that they utilize to invite applicants for interview. 61% indicated that volunteer experiences were important to them, and then research as well. And these are not the only non-academic experiences that are important to residency programs, but gives you a snapshot highlighting just how important these things are. Now, how will we highlight these non-academic experiences? We will highlight those in the residency application in different ways. For most US specialties, the application system that you will utilize is called the Electronic Residency Application Service. Within that application system, there is a experience section. In the old days, we could list many, many experiences, but now we have a limit. That limit started a few years ago. So there's a maximum of 10 experiences we can list. And of those 10 experiences, we can identify 3 that are most meaningful. For every experience that you have an experience description box in which you can describe just what it is that you did and what the significance it was to you. And one of the things that programs will look at very closely is this experience section to assess your well-roundedness. They're going to look at the type of experiences you've been involved in. They're going to assess the breadth and depth of those experiences. And they're going to be looking to see how the things that you've done fit with their particular program. Every specialty has many, many programs. If we're just talking about internal medicine, for example, there are over 700 internal medicine residency programs, each of which has their own mission, and those missions can differ. And so they're looking for people who will have fit with whatever their goals of the program are. Now, I want to share with you some common mistakes made by applicants in the experience section of the application. And the first one is what we call a bare application. This is where we receive an application, and when we look at it, there are very few experiences. And we often see this when the priority by an applicant is on the exams. And it's completely understandable to have that as a priority. But I want to remind you that being involved in non-academic experiences is important and should be something that you work on concurrently with your exam prep. And if you have a good plan to do that, it is very possible to prepare effectively and score well in the USMLE while building your resume. So we often see this problem, especially when people delay working on those non-academic aspects of their background. We also see what's called the dabbler application, where people are dabbling in this or dabbling in that. What I mean by that is they do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. But when we look and scratch below the surface, there hasn't been a lot of depth or commitment to the things that people are doing. So if you're looking at your resume and you see a lot of very, very brief activities, one-day events, sometimes people can look at that as dabbling. And that's not to say that one-time events are not useful and not important to residency programs, but they also want to see that you've committed to some things. For example, what you all are doing in this organization, the impacts you're making on community outreach, public health, through SCORA, through these are things that, if you're involved in, and you show depth and commitment to the organization, it's something that we highly value in the residency selection process. We also have to guard against a superficial application. So we have people who get involved in different things. They lead HPV awareness campaigns. They talk about PCOS. We see this in applicants, and they've made vital contributions. But when they comes time to describing them in the application, it doesn't feel like they've been as involved as much as they have. So we have to make sure that we do justice to the things that we do or have done and represent those in that way in the application. We also have to guard against the one-trick pony application. This is where people put all of their eggs in one particular basket. Now, I'm a big believer of following your passions. So if your passions are in research, to go after that. If your passions are in teaching, to go after teaching endeavors. If you like to mentor, become involved as a mentor. But going back to what we're saying about well-roundedness, we want you to experience many different things. And when you experience many different things, it can change your life because you discover things about yourself that you never knew. And you might find yourself being very interested in more than one thing. And if you can do this, you will better be able to show fit with a wider range of programs. So don't make your application only about one thing. Try many things, find what you're passionate about, and show that commitment through the breadth and depth of your experiences. Let's talk about an action plan to become a well-rounded residency applicant. So I'm going to walk you through some steps that you all can do right now, a very useful exercise that will help you plan and take the steps necessary to become that well-rounded applicant. So step one is take a piece of paper sometime this weekend or get on your computer and make an all-inclusive list of every activity that you have ever done. Don't just use your CV. Sometimes people have done things that they don't include your CV in their CV. So make a list of everything, whatever's in your CV, whatever's not in your CV, and take a look at that list and see what categories those activities fall into. So that's step two. Look and see, what have you done in research? What have you done through your volunteer work, through your leadership, through your mentoring, through your community service, through outreach, through advocacy? That'll give you a sense of where you are today and how far you've come. You'll have a better gauge of how well-rounded you are. You'll know what you're strong in, and you'll get a better idea of what you need to work on. And that's step three. you have to ascertain the extent of your involvement and your contributions. And we can do that by looking at how long you've been involved in an experience, how much time you've put into that experience, what you've done in that experience. Have you had a leadership role? Now, I meet a lot of students from all over the world who haven't had an opportunity to have a formal leadership position. I want to tell you all that it's not necessary to have a formal leadership role to show leadership qualities and commitment. You can do that in a lot of organizations that you belong to if you see a need and you figure out how to use your leadership to fill that need. So look for involvement in the organizations that you take part in and how you can contribute, so you can show that leadership and measure your impact. What is the impact that you're making through that involvement? Now, once you've done this exercise, you can create an action plan to strengthen your candidacy as a residency applicant over time. And this will allow you to be the well-rounded residency applicant you seek to become, whether you have 9 months to do this, 2 years, or 4 years before you apply. Let's move on to strategy 2, which is to create a strong USMLE preparation plan. So at the present time, the survey of program directors that I spoke to you about has indicated that the STEP exams are the most important factor in making interview decisions. At the top of that list of factors is our USMLE Step 1 exam. Step 1 passed is the most important factor. It has a mean importance rating of 4.5, and that's on a scale of 1 not being very important to 5 being very, very important. Now, next slide shows you a very interesting comparison. On the left side, you have USMLE Step 1 pass-fail rates for IMGs from 2020 with respect to the Step 1 exam. On the right side, you have the same data from 2024. If you look at 2020, you'll see that 13% of IMGs failed, but in 2024, 27% failed. So what accounts for this substantial change in performance? Has the exam gotten harder? And the evidence is that it's not so much that the exam has changed, but something major happened between 2020 and 2024, and that was that the exam went from numerical scoring to pass-fail scoring. Now, when this happened, we have seen fail rates climb, not just for IMGs, but also for USMDs and USDO applicants. And that all has to do with the perception that a pass-fail exam, that's something that I can do, right? I don't have to put all of my efforts into this because I can just pass this exam. And so people aren't necessarily putting the same type of effort, energy, resources into preparing for this exam. And that's why we're seeing the higher fail rates. Now, Step 1 fail doesn't mean that you can't match into US residency, but it makes the process much more difficult, way more challenging. So the first order of business is putting your heart and soul into preparing for this exam as if this was numerically scored. The second most important factor when making interview decisions is our Step 2 performance. It has a mean importance rating of 4.2. Programs in many specialties have cutoff scores. The percentage of programs using cutoff scores varies from specialty to specialty. Cutoff scores refer to a threshold that the program sets. So if you exceed that cutoff score, your application will remain in consideration, and applicants who are below that score may not get any further review of that application. These cutoff scores are not always rigid, but they are something that programs do utilize in the screening process. So what's our action plan for the USMLE? What are some important considerations? Well, we need to plan early in terms of our timeline for these exams. Obviously, these exams take many, many, many months to prepare for, so we need to figure out how to put that into play based on whether we're a student, a graduate, and all the things that we have going on in our lives. Now, there are advantages and disadvantages to taking the Step 1 as a medical student. One of the chief advantages is that you are close to the subject material that is being tested on the Step 1. the exam is, as you all know, about basic sciences. So if you can prepare for the step one as a medical student while you're in your basic science phase of your curriculum, that can really help you take that exam sooner rather than later. Now, that does often mean that you have to do much, much more work, extra work, because as opposed to the US, where our medical schools, their curriculum is often built around the USMLE, international medical schools, that's often not the case. So it does make your life more difficult, but many students do try to prepare for this concurrently while satisfying the requirements of their medical school. Now, another advantage of taking the step one as a medical student is it makes you eligible for many elective programs in US-based universities. Now, as far as step two is concerned, we want to have a score before we apply for residency. And since we apply for residency in September, many people will target completing this exam by July to August of their application year. I would argue to you that if you can take it earlier, it's even better, because what ends up happening in the months before you apply is there's a big crunch of activities. There's people who are preparing for the exam, they are doing rotations, they're working on their residency application, they're interfacing with their medical school to get the necessary documents like their MSPE. And so these 3 to 4 months before you apply become so hectic that it can really have an effect on your scores, as well as your ability to get everything else done. So if you timeline allows you to do this step exam before the summer prior to when you apply, that can be better. Now, adequate preparation is essential. I'm a big believer in putting your heart and soul into the step one exam, pretending that that's numerically scored, because the study habits and strategies that you utilize for step one prep, if you find the right habits and strategies and it leads to success on your step one prep, then that's going to help you perform better on your step two. So of course that means preparing with Q banks and gauging the adequacy and the effectiveness of your prep with some benchmarks, particularly self-assessment exams, and making adjustments during your step one study so that you are optimizing your learning as it relates to the nature of the exam. Your dedication to step one will definitely translate to better habits and strategies that will put you in a better place for success on step two. Now, while you're studying, I meet a lot of students who, are tired of the studying process because this stretches on for weeks, months, sometimes even longer than that. And above everything else, while you're studying, you have to guard your emotional well-being and your mental health. So remember to have in your action plan processes in place, systems which are recharging you, allowing you to be the best that you can be during a stressful part of the journey. And always keep in mind that scores are just one part of the process. You're going to hear a lot about it's all about scores. It's not all about scores. Certainly, higher scores are helpful, but there are many, many examples of people with 260s and 270s who get very few interviews, and lots of examples of people in the 230s who get lots of interviews. So it's one part of the process. Our next strategy has to do with networking, and we have to understand best practices in networking. And I want to share with you a quote from the University of Washington School of Medicine, very important quote: networking is a lifelong process of developing relationships with others. This can be through relationships with classmates, residents, attendings, mentors, and career advisors. They allow you to get personalized information and advice that you need to make better career decisions. Some of these people may become your future advocates. Nurture your network before you need it. I underlined that part of the quote, such an important part of this quote. And what that means is to recognize how important networking is, to embrace it. Everyone is a bit uncertain about this. It's not something we're born to do, but in the US, networking is a very much an accepted practice. It's something that can be learned. But first, you have to realize its importance, you have to embrace it, and you have to begin the process. I encourage all of you to start the networking process now. Doesn't matter where you are. You could be a second year MBBS student. You could be 9 months away from applying. The more time you have to network, the better it is for your situation. One of the things that you need to do before you start networking with people is to have a clear idea of what you want to accomplish. What is the purpose of you reaching out to other people? A great way to start when reaching out to other people is to come at it from the angle of being an information seeker. The people that you're networking with have done the things that you wish to do. So they are in a position of experience, and they will often be happy to share the wisdom of their experience. So approaching them as an information seeker can be a great way to get things started. We have to have good manners in the networking process. I'll share you an example. I had an international medical graduate reach out to me, wanting, some of my time to ask questions, and she reached out to me on a Saturday. And here in the U.S., our weekends are on Saturday and Sunday, and I was particularly busy that weekend with outside activities, and so I didn't get a chance to respond to her on that Saturday. On Sunday morning, I woke up to a second communication from her saying, "Hey, did you get my previous message?" And that Monday, when I came back to work, I now had some time to address her messages. But if you're going to reach out to somebody, you have to give them a bit of time, 1 to 2 weeks, because physicians everywhere are busy. And they may have received your message, but there may have been something going on that had prevented them from responding right away. So part of networking in your action plan is doing it effectively and having good manners and the proper etiquette. Before you network with someone, you need to know what you want to say about yourself. So I always encourage people to have a 1-minute summary to give to people about themselves. You want to have questions ready to ask, because you'll have time in that conversation to ask those questions. And once you initiate a networking relationship, that's just the beginning. You want to strengthen that relationship over time. And so you need to have a process in place that will allow you to build that relationship. So it means following up, maintaining contact, and remembering to show gratitude, to say thanks. That same student that I was telling you about that reached out to me on a Saturday and a Sunday, I finally reached back out to her on Monday. We ended up having a conversation 1 week later. It was a 1-hour conversation. But you know what didn't happen after that conversation? She didn't reach out to me to express appreciation for me giving that time. People in the US will remember those people who have good manners, who show the right etiquette, and express appreciation for the time that they're being given. So make sure that you show those good manners. Now, one of the most common mistakes we see with a networking action plan is people ask for too much too soon. If your goal is to get somebody to advocate for you at a residency program, that's generally not a good thing to talk about the first time you talk to someone. Okay. They don't know you yet, right? You could have a tremendous amount to offer. You could be somebody with a great fit for a program, but you have to let that process build up over time. You have to build that credibility, build that relationship before somebody is going to give you something big. So be patient and be respectful. Our next strategy is to make well-informed US clinical experience decisions. We all have heard that US clinical experience is important, but let's discuss why it's important and the benefits this experience will provide you. So US clinical experience, there's no doubt that if you get it, it will lead to a stronger residency application. If you have equally qualified candidates, some of whom have US clinical experience and others that don't, the ones with US clinical experience are going to get the nod for interview positions. when you get involved in US clinical experience, it shows that you have insight, experience about the US healthcare system, that you're familiar with how things work over here. That is not to say that what you've done in India isn't important, but they want to understand how your skills and qualities that you've developed, the foundation you built in India, how does that translate to the US system? So getting involved in clinical experience in the US shows your readiness for residency and your familiarity with your system. When you have your boots on the ground here in the US, you get to develop a relationship with your clinical preceptor. It provides opportunities for networking, but it's not just the clinical preceptor you're networking with. By being in that particular city, you have the opportunity to meet and connect with other people in that area, which can help advance your mission. So through this process, you can develop relationships with mentors who can become your advocates over time. And of course, it allows you to stand out from other applicants because not all applicants have the opportunity to engage in US clinical experience. So if you can do that, it helps separate you from those that are unable to do that. And of course, it helps you secure letters of recommendation. Now, we talked earlier about how step scores are the top factor used to make interview decisions. Letters of recommendation are the number 2 most important factor, and they've increased in importance ever since step 1 went pass, fail. And I want to share with you a quote from Dr. Arthur DeCross, former PD of the Gastroenterology Fellowship at the University of Rochester. There's a lot to take away from this quote. And he says, letters of recommendation are very important and best serve the applicant when they are meaningful. A warm, sincere, and honest letter from someone who knows the applicant well, which goes into great detail with glowing enthusiasm about the applicant's attributes, is far more valuable than a perfunctory form letter from a famous figure. So the key points from this quote are they're important, they need to be meaningful. Note his reference to a warm, sincere, and honest letter, which suggests that that letter writer has close relationship with you, that's authentic. So the applicant is known well to that letter writer. Note that he writes about the detail, right? The positivity about the attributes. And the final part of this quote is that the content of the letter is so much more important than a generic letter written by someone at a famous institution or by someone who has tremendous stature in the field. So those are the key points to remember, and they're going to help guide our USCE clinical experience 10-step action plan. So there's 10 steps that I want to present to you for you to think about as you're weighing your US clinical experience options. This will allow you to make a sound and informed decision. So step 1 is to secure the right number of months. Now, many people will try to get around 3 months of USCE. And that's a reasonable plan. And the reason why it's a reasonable plan is there are programs, many programs, that require or recommend at least 3 months of USCE. In addition, for every month of USCE you do, you will generally earn 1 letter of recommendation. Most programs ask for 3 letters of recommendation in the residency application. So if you've done 3 months, the expectation is you will have earned 3 letters, which will satisfy the requirement for the majority of programs. Now, more than 3 is great. If you have the means, the ability to do that, there's a lot of advantages to that. You will see that the more USCE months you do, you will unlock more programs. So there are some programs that require or recommend 4 months of USCE. Some say 6. There are some that say 1 year. Now, the more you do, it also serves as a differentiating factor between you and other applicants. So if most applicants are doing 2 or 3, if you reach 4, 5, 6, there's a significant difference there, right? So if you have the means to do it, that's a great way to strengthen your application. Step 2 involves prioritizing hands-on experiences over shadowing or observership experiences. Now, shadowing experiences may not count as USCE for many programs. You will see that explicitly stated on many program websites. The other problem with shadowing or observership experiences is it imposes some limits on what you can do. So it becomes harder to show the key attributes that residency programs are looking for in their letters of recommendation. And so if you earn a letter of recommendation from a shadowing experience, they often are not as strong as what you can earn from a hands-on experience. Step 3, when you're considering the USCE, analyze it carefully. Examine what it means if it's a hands-on experience. Ask yourself a key question. What will I be doing? Now, the reason this is important is that a survey showed that most PDs feel that new interns, new PGY1 residents, should possess certain skills at the beginning of residency. And so they are in search of evidence that you have those skills in the residency application and through your letters of recommendation. So let's take a look at what those skills are. So this is a table adapted from a paper written a few years back, where they surveyed program directors and asked these PDs, what skills should new interns have when they start residency? So on the left-hand side of this table, you'll see the skill, things like gathering a history and performing an exam, providing an oral case presentation or a summary of a patient encounter, being able to document in the written or electronic format, being a part of a team. So you'll see the skills on the left. On the right, you will see the percentage of PDs that indicated that these skills were important. The percentage in the black shaded box is the percentage that said this is a must-have for interns starting residency. So you'll see 94% want people who know how to take a history and an exam and do it in a US context. 87% want to see that new interns have proficiency in presenting new patients or established patients that they see in encounters. As a professor of internal medicine at Baylor, I work with new interns all the time. I've worked with new interns who are USMDs, DOs, and IMGs. And I can tell you that many people struggle with their oral case presentation skills. So there are deficiencies in these areas that we are very well aware of. And so we are looking as resident selection committees, evidence that you've been exposed to these skills and have taken part in these skills, preferably in a US format. Step 4 in the action plan is when you're considering a USCE, ascertain the process for obtaining a letter of recommendation. Now, no matter where you do your USCE, whether you do it in a clinic, in a community hospital, in a university, your letter is going to be something that you earn and is based on your performance. But you need to understand any policies that exist at the clinic or the university about LORs. For example, there are rotations where you can rotate, but you can't earn an LOR because there's a policy in place. Now, at these places, can exceptions be made? Sometimes that happens. But when you're creating your USCE plan, you don't want to assume that they're going to make exceptions for you, because you could easily set up a USCE plan where you rotate at places that, because the policies are in place, the attendings or preceptors with whom you work may cite that policy as a reason why they can't support you with a letter of recommendation. So you need to be aware of what you're getting into so you can make a good decision. Step 5, in order to earn strong letters of recommendation, we significantly advocate for the right duration of US clinical experience. So 4 weeks is what we think is ideal. And the reason we believe that is my research in education has shown that it takes time for a new learner to reach their peak level of performance. Because you're new to the situation, it takes a couple of weeks. And so if you're doing shorter duration USCEs, you may not be able to show your true abilities in 1 to 2 weeks. And so by the time you're rotating off, the attending or preceptor may not get an accurate representation of what you have to offer. And this may prevent you from getting a letter of recommendation, or if you get a letter of recommendation, it may be suboptimal. Now, if you're going to do a longer USCE, so something that's 4 weeks or longer, you need to also assess who you're going to be working with. You don't want to assume you'll be working with a single preceptor for the entire time. So what I mean by that is, where I'm a professor at the Baylor College of Medicine, attendings like myself, we switch off at 1 to 2 week intervals. So if you've got a 4-week university rotation, and there's a chance that you could be working with 4 different attendings, each of whom you're with for 1 week. And if it takes you a couple of weeks to get to your peak, that may impact your ability to get letters because you have such a short duration of time with a single preceptor. And it's not uncommon for university attendings to say, I would love to write you a letter, but I don't feel like we had enough time to get to know each other. So when you're choosing your clinical experiences, try to choose experiences where you'll get more time with a preceptor so you can show your true abilities and get the letter that you deserve. Step 6 is select USCE with a small number of rotators. The number of learners that you have in a rotation can significantly affect the experience, the quality of that experience, your clinical opportunities, how much time you have with your preceptor, the relationship you build with that preceptor, and at the end of the day, the quality of your letter. So always ask, how many rotators are there going to be with you? And no matter how attractive a clinical experience can be in other aspects, we strongly caution you to give careful thought about experiences where you'll be with more than 5 learners. So remember, what you want out of this experience is the opportunities, enough time with the preceptor, and a chance to earn that strong letter of recommendation. Step 7 and 8 have to do with selecting the right preceptor. We want people who are going to be great role models. So you have to ask yourself, is this preceptor going to be someone who's nurturing, who's supportive, who's encouraging? Is this someone who's going to inspire you, right? The right role model can change your life. And they could be inspiring because of their clinical ability, their teaching, their mentorship. We want people who care about you. So whether you're going to be doing something with alumnus, whether you are going to do something with a rotation provider, a university, try to ascertain what that preceptor is like and how much they will care about their students. Caring preceptors will find ways to get you involved. They will never forget what it was like to be in your shoes. And because they're empathetic to your situation, they will be invested in you by identifying new opportunities for you, by making introductions of you to their colleagues. So there's a lot preceptors can do if they care about you. And caring preceptors are also invested in writing meaningful letters of recommendation. Now, of course, we said earlier that performance is the key, right? Is the major part of the process to earn that strong letter of recommendation. But the preceptor also has to be committed to that process. Now, strong letters of recommendation require time to write. So when I have a medical student at Baylor that asked me for a letter, it typically takes me 3-4 weeks to write that letter because I have to work on it. I have to put it aside. I have to think about it. When I come back to it, I think about new things. Like I want to do a good job for my medical student. So it takes time. And this brings us to a very important point. Beware of preceptors who take lots of students, because if the process of writing a letter takes time, if you have lots and lots of students, that means the preceptor is going to have less time to make it deeply meaningful and personal. Pick preceptors where you can be collaborative with the letter writing process. So what does this mean? So at Baylor, I will sometimes work with medical students a year before they apply. And I get to know my medical students very well. And I get to see how they shine in terms of their different qualities. Now, 1 year later, when they approach me to ask me for a letter, I'm very happy to support them. And I remember the qualities that made them stand out. But what I don't remember as well is some of the examples and stories and the patients that they cared for from their time with me that I could use to back up the positivity that I'm going to express in that letter of recommendation. So I invite my students to submit material to me that will allow me to write the meaningful letter that they deserve. And so that's what I mean by a collaborative process. Final step in the 10-step action plan is to create a properly sequenced USCE plan. So no matter how many months of USCE you are planning, the sequence or order of these rotations are crucial. They matter a lot. We just got through talking about it takes time for you to reach your peak level of performance. And I'd like to draw a comparison to my own story. So I was a US medical student. So I was born and brought up here in the US. So very familiar with the US healthcare system. And my medical school was 2 years of basic sciences, followed by 2 years of clinical rotations. My first clinical rotation was a 4-week family medicine rotation. And in that rotation, I struggled. Although I had taken a physical diagnosis course prior to that rotation, I was nowhere near being comfortable doing proper history and physical. I was refining my skills in those processes. I didn't know how to present patients at that time. And so that first month was me getting used to a new culture and a new system. My second rotation was a 6-week psychiatry rotation. And there I was more seasoned, I was more effective, but I was still learning the ropes. After my second rotation, I did a 12-week internal medicine rotation. And it was at that point that I was really hitting my stride. I knew how to take histories and physicals. I had confidence in my abilities. I had figured out how to present patients effectively and properly to my attending physicians. I knew how to document notes in the electronic medical record. And so this was my experience as a US medical student. And what I can tell you is that international medical students and graduates have a similar experience. But the difference is you are all much more new to the system than I was when I was a new clinical student. And so you have to give yourself time to hit your stride. What I have seen is that the peak level of clinical ability for international medical students and graduates takes about a couple of months. And we see very often people who do rigorous, high pressure, important rotations right from the get-go. If you do those types of rotations from get-go, they're not going to see your true abilities because it takes time to adapt to a new culture, a new system. So what we advocate that you do is do those university rotations, try to do those addition electives, but do those towards the end of your USCE plan. A better approach is to spend your first 1 or 2 months on hands-on experiences where you're going to be given duties similar to what is expected of a new PGY1 resident. We talked in the previous slide about the skills that are vital for an incoming resident. If you can arrange for experiences where you can have exposure and opportunity to work on those skills, and you can do it in a safe, nurturing, and supportive environment with a caring preceptor, that's going to position you for success when you do your university experiences later on in your USCE plan. So that brings us nearly to the end of our presentation. I want to segue to MD2B Connect and how we can help you reach your goals. We created MD2B Connect to connect you to your place in medicine, and that means connecting you with the right information and knowledge, the proper resources, empowering you in a very, very personalized way, presenting to you high quality rotations and individualized support. And we started this 8 years ago, Manish and I, because we recognized the vital contributions that internationally trained physicians have had in the United States. IMGs account for 25% of our physician workforce. They have made significant contributions, as I said earlier, in teaching, mentoring, patient care, research, the list goes on. As my career, 25 plus years as a professor, has evolved, I've seen more and more challenges with internationally trained physicians who want to come to the US. One of the biggest challenges is securing high quality clinical experiences. So when Manish and I came together 8 years ago, we felt very strongly that we wanted to give these future physicians those types of opportunities because we saw that they were becoming increasingly limited in different institutions across the US. So when we created MD2B Connect, we didn't just want it, though, to be about a clinical experience. We wanted to create something that was based on honesty, integrity, and trust. Because the way we looked at it is if tomorrow I went to India and wanted to practice as a physician, I would have to put my trust and faith in people in India that would be able to guide me. And we know how difficult it is to come from India to the US, and we want to, be a trusted resource. And so trust is everything that we're based on. And we're very proud to be recognized as the most trusted and highest rated provider of clinical rotation experiences in the US. And now there are 3 pillars of our program. So we have a tremendous number of high quality clinical experiences, but we don't believe that your involvement in our program should only be about a clinical experience. We believe in structured mentorship. I was fortunate to have some great mentors in medical school, and I know what mentorship can do when it's available. I've seen just how difficult it is to get that mentorship for people from all over the world. And so a big part of our program is providing that mentorship, not just when you do the rotation. You're definitely during the rotation, I'm going to be available to all of our students, and I take a deep dive into each student's background, and we create a very specific plan. So that mentorship is there during the rotation. But we believe in long-term mentorship. So every rotator in our program has my direct line. I like to keep up with our students and hear about how they're making progress. And I'm available for meetings to answer questions. That's a big part of our program. And then, of course, all of this is designed to help you develop professionally so you can be a successful resident when you start your training program here in the United States. So these are our pillars. We're known to be very personalized. Highly personalized is how people describe us. We don't believe in a one-size-fits-all approach. You are all unique, and we dig deep to understand your background, what your goals are, and we tailor our approaches to you. We are very much known for preparing people to do well in their university rotations and electives, and that's because I myself am a professor at a university, so I know exactly how US-based attendings think. I know what the culture of university rotations are, and many of my conversations with our rotators are designed to help you be ready for those university rotation electives, and we help you get there through various means. And finally, I'd like to say that we are relentless in our efforts to support our students. We view you as the future of medicine in the US, and we know that once you get here, you're going to do great things, and we want to be there to help you get there. And so it's not just come and do a clinical experience. We're going to do everything we can before, during, and after that clinical experience to help you reach your dreams. And nothing makes us happier than in mid-March on match day when our rotators reach out to us and they say, Dr. Desai, I matched. It makes us so happy, and that's what we want for all of you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Manish for some final comments.
Yes, thanks, Samir. So just real quick before we get to the questions and answers, I just wanted to add a couple of points to what Samir said, which, obviously a lot of great information there. I'd say a couple things about our company that I think are important. One of the main points, I would describe it as we want to be the opposite of an experience of buying something on Amazon. And what I mean by that, for us, it's not a point click purchase a service like you're buying something online. It really is, as Samir said, about getting to know you. This is a very important decision. There's a lot of detail and nuance and a lot of information about yourselves and the decision that of what to do for your path to residency and the who you want to be involved with and what services you want to purchase and or get as part of your thing. So that is really important to us to understand that we only get to know that by getting to know our clients and who are part of our family and them getting to know us. So it really is all about building the relationship to us and not just a transaction. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that it is, as Samir also said, very individualized. everybody's story is different. And you can't use a one-size approach one size that fits all approach. It really has to be each person and getting to know them and seeing what's best for them. I would not say we're the company for every single person that's out there. Look, everybody has different budgets, everybody has different time frames, everybody has different expectations and thoughts. What I would say is where we would shine is if you want the mentorship, you want the advice, you want to know and trust that you're going to be working someone who's going to be a partner with you, then the MDDP Connect is for you. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir and Manish. If you all are done with the presentation, I think we can move forward with the question answers. So if anyone has any question, you can either raise your hand, unmute yourself and ask the questions, or else you can put in the chat box and we'll take it up from there. Actually, I already have a few questions that were asked by the participants when they registered. So there were a lot of questions, but I'll just ask an overview of like what were the basic doubts that they had. So the basic question, I think a lot of us present here are like first, second year and starting off with the medical journey. So they're like, what is the best time to get started with the preparation for USMLE? Like, what is the best time? Like, do they prefer it, when they are done with the second year, or they do it after they're done with their 4 years of medical education in India?
Yeah. So what I would say is that if you are thinking about coming to the US, I would recommend that you talk to as many people as you can about what it's like to be in the US and to go through this process of securing a residency position here. Part of the process, no matter where you are in medical school, is determining whether this is the right thing for you. Okay. And everybody comes to that decision in different ways. Some people have enough advice and mentorship from seniors and maybe family that they have in the US. Other people need to come here early in medical school and just experience something in the US. There's no right approach to that. But once you know that this is a possibility, you want to get started by doing things that are going to get you closer to your eventual goal of matching. So if you're first or second year student, where I would focus your time is thinking about where does the USMLE fit into my timeline. It's also a great time to think about the non-academic activities that we talked about earlier. What experiences are available to you? What have you been involved in so far? Because these experiences outside of the medical school curriculum, they are an excellent training ground for building qualities and skills that are help you down the road for the residency match. They help you become that well-rounded applicant that we talked about before. And the more time you have to build that, the more impact that you'll be able to make through those experiences, which will be felt very, very deeply by the residency programs when you apply. So these are just a couple of things to think about is when can you take the USMLE, depending upon where you're at, and what can you get involved in? But people make this decision at various points. So if you make it in medical school, that's great. If you make it after medical school, those opportunities are also still there to build your profile, to take the exam. We have worked with so many rotators that are early in medical school, are 3, 4, 5 years out of medical school. We've had people who have matched 15, 20 years out of medical school. So the point is that no matter when you make this decision, there are concrete steps that you can take that will get you there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir, for that insight. So we have another question from Meghna, who says, first of all, thanking you both for so much of your guidance. I would like to hear more about the research opportunities and how to gain them, and a few more tips for surgical residency match.
Thank you, Meghna, for your questions. So research is something that I encourage everyone to take part in. If you're looking for a research opportunity in the US, uh, we do have many of those research opportunities based in universities and academic medical centers. These in-person experiences tend to be longer term experiences. So many of them are 1 year, 9 months, 9 to 12 months. And the reason they want a longer term commitment is it takes 2 to 3 months to train somebody in the role that they're going to take. These can be fantastic experiences. Uh, Many of these experiences are not publicized. Those that are made public are very competitive to get because they're easily seen by the whole community. But a lot of the positions that are in our universities are filled through internal means. So quite often, if there's an IMG or a USMD that's doing a long-term research position and um, let's say they match in March, well, then the PI or the research mentor is going to start looking for a replacement when that happens. And so they'll often reach out to their colleagues or to their research associate, that IMG who matched. And if you are in that person's network, you'll have an opportunity to know about that position. And you may have a leg up because you could potentially get that position before it's advertised to the whole world. So these positions are available. It's very important to network, as we talked about before, to understand what's available. Now, putting yourself in position to get those experiences also involves building your skills in research even before you come to the US. So I would encourage people to take courses. There are many online courses that you can take on research principles that will introduce you to those skills. There may be research opportunities that you can get involved with at your home medical school or through other organizations in India that will allow you to build your resume. So when you reach out to these research mentors, you can communicate to them that you have the foundation to become a productive team member in their department. Now, as far as the second part of your question, the surgical specialties, they tend to be much more competitive than such specialties as internal medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, neurology. Okay. The general thing we recommend for surgical specialties is to start by doing a clinical experience in that surgical specialty in the US. This will get your feet wet, will expose you to the specialty, will allow you to meet somebody who's established in the field. But you want to pick something that's less pressure. Again, going back to what I said before, someone who's caring, nurturing, who's going to look out for you so that you can get acclimated to the US. And then you're going to want to use that as a launching point to get involved in a university type experience. Okay. The university type experience can be a clinical rotation, it can be a research experience, but the reason you want to move into a university type role is you really need the backing and support of academics in the surgical specialty you're looking for, because they tend to be a smaller community and letters of recommendation written by those individuals carry much more weight. But before you go to a university, you have to have the requisite experience in a non-university setting so you can make a strong impression in a university rotation or a university research position. That's the general advice that we give people who approach us with an interest in a more competitive surgical specialty.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir, for the insight. I hope your question was answered. We have two more questions in the chat box. One is by Riddhi, who is thanking you, and she goes, I wanted to ask what all a second-year medical student can do for boosting up the CV as well as for their studies. And then we have Sherwin, who is also thanking you for your guidance, and they wanted to know if about the opportunities for dental science students from India in the US. What are the qualifications, exams, and procedures, if that is something that you all cover?
So let me jump on the second question first, and then I'll let Samir talk about the second year. So really, actually, our program has nothing. We don't really do anything related to dental. So I just wanted to be upfront about that. I will say my wife is a dentist, but she was actually trained, grew up and trained in the U.S. It's a whole different process. The very little I know, and I'm going to say I'm not an expert, is that more things need to be redone if you're a dentist in India coming to the US. But our company doesn't do anything really related to advising for dental school or things related to that. So I apologize for that. We're definitely focused on medicine and there. So sorry about that. You definitely have to find some more of that information in other places.
Okay. So
Samir, if you wanted to talk about the second year medical student question that Riddhi had.
So the first part of the question is how can you put yourself in a position for future success if you're in a second year of your medical school program. So the first thing that I would do is, if you've decided that you're going to take the step one during medical school, I would become familiar with the subject matter that is tested on that exam. I would acquire the resources that you need to master that material. Now, some of that material you will be mastering through your own medical school's coursework, because there will be overlap. But as I mentioned earlier, international medical schools generally don't teach towards the USMLE, so you'll have to fill in some of the gaps. But if you are using resources that the typical US medical student uses for step one prep, you can use those resources concurrently with what you're using in India. So whatever discipline or module you're studying for, you can study with a USMLE prep resource at the same time. That way, you have covering the material at the relevant time. And then when it comes time to prepare for the exam and review the material, you've already gone through the material. So it's not new material that you're going through. So you've built that foundation, and now your review process is going to be much more directed. You don't have to learn more material because you've done it right from the start. Okay. Now, along the way, you have to work in those practice questions. You have to know that the approach you're taking with your study strategies are working, right? Because the study strategies you use for your Indian exams may be very different than the study strategies you need for an exam that's the USMLE. So all of these things, can be done concurrently with your medical school coursework. At the same time, you start asking yourself, what are you passionate about? Are you into public health? Are you into community outreach? Are you into teaching? Is it mentorship, advocacy? Based on those interests, I would get involved in organizations where you can develop those interests further, build those vital skills, make an impact through the work that you're doing. Because that's going to be building your resume for your future. And so if you're tending to these things early because you're a second year student, by the time you get ready to apply years later, you have a very robust CV. You don't have to scramble towards the end trying to strengthen your CV because you've been working on it right from the start. So that's the advantage of when you make a decision to come to the US early in your medical school education. You can take these key steps.
Thank you. Thank you again, Dr. Samir, for your insight. And we have another last question in our chat box where they have asked, they wanted to know about the cost of the USMLE from the exam cost to the residency cost for an MG.
Yeah, I'll answer that part though. So Fudel, that's a very difficult question to answer from this standpoint. There's a very wide range, and why it's a wide range when you talk about costs. There are some of the, I'll call the hard costs, what's known, how much an exam takes to cost. So an exam for step 1, step 2 might be around $1,000 each for international students or graduates. It'll be depending on how many programs you apply to. If you apply to a wide range of programs at the time of application, that will be a few $1,000s, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000. Again, it depends on the quantity that you apply to. But there are so many variables that can make the number much smaller or much larger for people. And a lot of times there's a relationship between the time you spend and how much money you spend, and sometimes it's the more time is less money. Sometimes it's both. So there's it's a very complex answer. And the big things that I would think about, of course, are the hard costs of testing and applying. But you have when you do the U.S. clinical experience, do you have family or friends in the U.S. with someplace to stay? That will radically affect your cost. Were you able to find what types of experiences were you able to find, and where are you doing them through, as far as how much you're paying or not paying for them? That will have thousands of dollars of effects of cost. So really, to say, beyond saying it's going to be a few $1,000s, it's hard to say whether that means it's $5,000 to $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 over time, because each person has their own resources and connections. Someone who doesn't know somebody here and wasn't able to find rotations through other means, or says, okay, I really like these rotations that I found from universities have a rotation costs. Different companies have rotation costs. So it could be all the way from something that is relatively less expensive, a few $1,000s, to more expensive, several $1,000s. So it's really hard to say for one person what the cost is going to be without looking at their specific situation.
Thank you so much for the insight, Mr. Manish. I think Bhavini, you have a question. You have raised your hand. You can go ahead.
Okay, so I have a question regarding, as Dr. Samir mentioned about the gap. So the major gap which we face as an Indian medical student is like everyone is preparing here for the Indian exam, that's NEET PG after the MBBS. So many times I face, and many other my friends who are preparing for USMLE face, like, am I on the right path or something like that? Self-doubt, anxiety phase. So how should we like be constant with our efforts? Because everyone knows that USMLE is not just a small exam like NEET PG. Like we have to give an exam, we will get a rank, then we'll get a seat accordingly. It's a huge process to go through. So how can we stay consistent with our efforts in that point of time that we are getting anxious or something like that?
Yes. So one of the things that I do with both my Baylor medical students and my my mentees in our MD2B Connect program, rotate with us, is I'm always concerned about well-being. So we're always talking about, how are you feeling? Because above all, we have to protect our health, right? Our physical, our psychological health, because we know this whole journey is grueling. And if we have the right systems in place at an early point when we're medical students, it's going to do so much for us through the entirety of our career. So medical school is a time to build your coping strategies, to build your buffers, to attend to healthy practices. It's very much about being deliberate in medical school. To give you an example, when I was a medical student and I had to do my surgery rotation, the 12-week surgery rotation, which was our most intense rotation in medical school. I had to routinely get up at 3:30 in the morning, be at the hospital at 4 to 4:30, and come home at night at 6 or 7 p.m. I made a very deliberate decision in my daily schedule and calendar to block out time every day for exercise. So I knew that at 7 p.m. there was going to be 30 minutes of exercise, no matter what. And I'll tell you, did I feel like doing exercise every day at 7 p.m.? No, but it was on my calendar and on my schedule. And I knew that if I didn't do it, I would feel guilty, right, about not doing it. So I was tired on many of those days, but I did it. And it helped, me ease some of that stress. It helped me recharge. And for everybody, it's going to be something different. For me, it was exercise. For somebody else, it could be watching their favorite sitcom. It could be, scheduling 15 minutes with their friend and having some laughs. We have to be intentional during the study process, regardless of whether you're preparing for the USMLE or the NEET or for both. We really need to be deliberate about protecting ourselves and recharging ourselves. Now, as far as gaps are concerned, if you're going to be taking time away from your studies for the USMLE, whether it's in medical school, after medical school, it's important to do some other things concurrently with your studying. Most people stop everything else and put every hour of the waking day into their study. And then months stretch on. Sometimes it becomes a year. And from the residency selection committee's perspective, we're interested to know, what have you been doing over all of this time? And so when you keep your fingers in other activities, when you're still doing something in community outreach and you're doing it concurrently with your exam prep, it's filling up this gap. Okay. It's something that you can point to. And it's not to say that you should spend 4 or 5 hours a day doing that. But if you're doing it, an hour 3 times a week, it's great because you're doing something that you're passionate about. It also recharges you. It's great for your well-being because you're doing something that you love. And these are the types of things that will really help you weather the ups and downs of the ruling exam process.
Yeah, and just to add to what Samir said, Bhavani. So I think that when Samir, just as expounding on community outreach, I mean, you're talking about, can you volunteer in a place? Can you be clinically active in a place somewhere? Can you do something part-time 1 day a week or a few hours a week that just keep the continuity of things and not just have a pure gap for studying, right? That is kind of what we're talking about. Is that fair to say?
Correct. And you will feel better for getting that into your schedule, and it will, as I said, recharge you, and that's part of that process of staying on track with your health as you deal with the rigors of these exams.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. I also have one more question, that the main gap I am facing right now between my USMLE prep and myself is that, like, there are many people around me who are just doing final year studies, and it's a really major term of the period in medical students life, that they are learning every clinical subjects right now, and they have started since the last year, and I am already lagging back behind 6 months for that, because I am planning that in to give step 1 in May 2026. So I'm like, am I on the right track, or am I taking the biggest risk of my life, or something like that, which pulls me back to that phase that affects my studies, and also to give up on USMLE again.
Yeah. So Bhavani, thank you for sharing that. First of all, you're not alone in how you feel. I'm sure you've met other people who feel similarly to what you've been feeling. And I think that what you want to remember is we all have our own path, right? Somebody may do things a certain way. Their timeline may be different than our timeline, but we can all end up in a very same or similar place, right? Because there's no one path that's right for everybody. And that's something that you have to hold on to, is you're carving your your own path, right? And it's going to be the path that's right for you. And you're continuously evaluating how what you're doing is working for you. And it's okay for us to make adjustments along the way. We have to be kind to ourselves while we're going through this process, right? Kindness. We have to remind ourselves how far we've come. Yes, there's much more to do, but we've already come so far. And if we can remind ourselves of that, that also helps us keep going in the future.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much for your insights. We have two more questions. Would you all be willing to take it, or do you want me to email it to you people? Because we have.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome.
No, we're
Partha,
fine.
to share.
Okay, sure. So we have a question which goes, first of all, they're thanking you, and it would be great if you could guide on regarding with the procedure for applying for clinical experience in US being an IMG. And Piyush has another question, which is in India, some medical schools don't allow to do rotation during the course of the program. How to stand out and do observer shifts while also acquiring those required hands-on skills, opportunities, and uh, that are only limited for visiting medical students.
Okay, let me talk about the first one a little bit, and then Samir can talk a little bit, and I'll also add to the second one. So first, about the procedure for applying to clinical experience. So there, I would actually describe it a little bit less than a procedure. There are different methods to acquire U.S. Clinical experience. Speaking specifically about just about us for a second, is that if you go to our website, what we do in our process, which is very different than most other places, is we have a free hour-long discussion where we explain, we get to know you and we get to explain our process. And that's there's no commitment, or you can go to our website, schedule a meeting, and that's one way to learn about acquiring a clinical experience through us. Other companies have their own processes. Other hospitals and university systems have their own very individual procedures and processes and requirements that are there. Like Samir mentioned, for step one, that many universities require that, or hospitals require that. That isn't a requirement for our program. So it's very the requirements and types of things that are needed are unique. Of course, there is the reaching out to people on your own. That typically takes a longer time process, and you always want to focus on getting a good quality rotation. So there's no one set procedure. It's all these different methods or paths depending on the type of experience that you're trying to acquire, from companies to universities and hospitals to trying to find things on your own. Each of them has their own process and steps that you can take. Depending on what you're pursuing. And also the point that Dr. Desai made is that the sequence matters, and that doing things in a safe environment where you get to build your confidence and skills, like we believe in our rotations, can prepare you for other things too. So I think that when you think about the sequence, think about the method, what your particular time and budget and all those things are, the procedure is going to be a little bit different, or a lot different for each way that you go. So I don't know, Samir, if you want to add to that at all.
Yeah, so I'll actually address the second part of the question,
Yep.
which is if you're in a medical school where you're limited in your ability to come to the US, the first thing that you want to do is revisit any medical school policies to truly understand what can or can't be done. Okay. Some schools will allow their students to do something in another country and even possibly get some credit for it. Okay. Other schools won't allow that. Now, some schools in their curriculum have some off time, and students will utilize those off periods to come to the US to engage in clinical experience. So if your school is very rigid and won't allow you to do that during the period of activity, whether you're in basic sciences or clinical rotations, you can look at your off periods to see if you can create a window for you to experience that. I've also seen international medical students from all over the world extend their medical education at different points to allow for some extra time to come to the US and take part in US clinical experience. So that's also something you can explore with your particular medical school. If none of that is possible as a medical student at your school, then there are opportunities to get involved in USCE after you graduate. Many, many people match into US-based residencies who have not done anything clinical in the US while they were a medical student, but did everything after they graduated.
And let me add to what Samir said to answer Piyush's question a little more, and the last point Samir made. There is no firm definition of what is exactly an observership and what exactly is hands-on. Okay, there's not an exact definition. Some people think observership means you can't touch the patient. Some people mean you can't do invasive procedures. Some people say you can't talk to a patient where you're purely shadowing. There's a broad range. I know that as said, and there's the understanding or a thought that you cannot get any type of hands-on opportunities after you graduate, and there are government laws. There are some hospital and university ways that interpret it. That would be a long answer and discussion here that we don't really have the time for. But I would say this: even after you graduate, the point is when you're coming here as a doctor and you want to learn how to take histories and present patients and do exams and do notes and EMR, all these things that are considered hands-on by us and our program directors. As a graduate, you still have the opportunity to learn how to do those things from US licensed doctors. And the point is you cannot go around, as a graduate or as a doctor from another country, you cannot come and do those things all independently. You're not a licensed doctor in the US, right? So it's, you can't prescribe drugs on your own and then treatment plans and all these things that, without, you have to learn and how to do these things from a US doctor. So I don't want the mindset and thought of there's no opportunity for hands-on after you graduate, meaning that you're not allowed to be a doctor in the US, but you are absolutely allowed to learn from doctors in the US and in our program, and that can be very in other places too, and that can be very advantageous and beneficial to your application. I wouldn't worry so much about the title of the rotation that you do. It can be called an elective. It can be called a rotation. It could be called an externship. It could be called an observership or whatever it may be. It's more about what you did or you didn't do, and that's what the focus should be on. When you're looking for a rotation and what you put in your application. So, Samir, any more to add to that?
No, nothing to add to that.
Thank you. I think that ends all the question in the chat. I had another question, which is like, if someone who is thinking to do a master's in public health or something after they are done with their MBBS in India, and then they want to apply for USMLE, does that hamper their chances, or is there anything with regards to that? Like if they want to do an additional course after their MBBS?
Yeah, so great question, Partho. It's one that I'm asked frequently. You do not need to do an MPH to secure a position in a US-based residency. However, if you have an interest in public health and you've given some thought to how public health fits into your vision for your future and your career, it may be something that is worthwhile for you to do, because it's going to give you that foundational training and education in public health. right? It also impart within you the skills you need, right? And in your MPH, there's often a practicum or a thesis, opportunity to do a project, research. You could sometimes connect with US-based faculty to do that research. So there are a lot of benefits to an MPH depending upon your individual situation. I would not say that it's a must-have, but it could be something that is really a good fit for you because it's something that you're deeply interested in. Are there some programs in the US that have a public health focus? There are some programs. In fact, there are some programs who uh, have opportunities for their residents to earn an MPH during their residency training. Okay. So there may be some benefits you get from doing an MPH where you might be able to communicate a better fit with certain types of programs.
Yeah, Samir, one aspect of that, and I don't know Partho or the whole depth of the question, but as far as the effect on year of graduation and staying maybe active during that time, because it's not really a gap because you're doing a program, but how does that affect the application?
Yeah. So certainly, the further you are from graduation, that has impact on the way in which you are viewed by the range of residency programs. Programs have differing requirements on their year of graduation. Uh, in general, if you're within 3 years of graduation, your application will appeal to a wide range of programs. So some of your decision making related to doing the MPH may be related to where you are in your journey and how many years have passed since your graduation. But even people who are further out from medical school can sometimes benefit from MPH for the reasons that I've mentioned. A lot of these schools of public health, the faculty that is there is shared in common with med school faculty. Because I have colleagues here at Baylor who are in public health, and we have a school of public health in our Texas Medical Center, and they have cross collaborations with faculty in those departments. So there are things that can benefit you from doing an MPH, but as Manish said, you do have to factor in year of graduation, and when you do an MPH program, if it's an in-person program, you may be limited in gaining clinical experience because of the way the program is structured. Okay, now, we've also seen people do online MPHs, which give them more flexibility, but that may also pose some limits on the other benefits that you could potentially get from an MPH program because it's online.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samir and Manish, for your insights. I think with that, we have come to the end of all the questions. I would like to take this opportunity to thank both of you for taking your time to join us and deliver such an insightful session on the Usmle Blueprint. The explanation, the exam structure, and the key points that all the applicants need to keep in mind were very strategic and practical. So I hope it helped our members, and we truly appreciate your willingness to share your experience and guide medical students navigate this journey, because it's a very long and grueling journey. So thank you so much, and we look forward to further collaborations with MSCI and MD2B Connect. So I think with that, we will be ending this session, and the live will be available in our YouTube for our members to view as and when they want to. Thank you so much, Manish and Dr. Samir.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
Partho. It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.